have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Jonsuntitledpod. I am your host, Jon, and this is Daniel Terry. How are you doing?
Oh man, I am doing great.
What's been going on with you this week?
Well,
I didn't know that'd be so funny.
My car battery died.
Hey, what did I tell you about hooking up your car batteries to your nipples?
Well, I know, but I mean, you only live once, and
YOLO.
Oh, is that what I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Well, I said it the proper way, John.
Oh,
None of that
okay.
hashtagagram weird stuff. But no, it died, and I somehow Frankensteined it back together using a mixture of baking soda and hot water.
Your nipples?
And now
Your nipples?
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, nipples. I use sulfuric acid.
Oh, okay.
But the car, I went ahead and used baking soda and hot water, and that did get the car to run for enough for me to get to work and get paid. So hopefully, I will have a new battery the next time we speak. So it's been a fun week.
So you're basically saying that we need Patreon money to buy you a new battery?
All the Patreon money, yes.
We will get to that. But speaking of money, we had a money guest in Kyle Landry, guitar player for Wilson. Fun thing. I realized when setting this interview up, the lovely people for Wilson's publicity team had reached out to me after doing the episode with Chad and said that if I was interested in doing something leading up to the album release, which will be out on August 24th, which will be this Friday. You can hear the new Wilson album, Tasty Nasty, out via Red Music. But yeah, they had asked if I wanted to interview someone from the band leading up to the record. They would send me the record and so forth, and I agreed. And interestingly enough, I realized I don't really think I've talked to Kyle at length ever in all the time that he's been in the band. But I mean, when you have 5 dudes that you've collectively known for a while, it gets a little hard to give everyone equal time. But I was looking forward to actually getting to talk to Kyle at length, since it's something I've never really done. And I felt a little bad for Dan because, I mean, he's going against... it'll happen when we talk to Dan from Zayo or anyone from Zayo. There'll be all of the years of knowing this person that Dan had to compete with that I realize would probably be a little bit of an issue, but...
it's like the Hopes Fall episode,
Yeah. Totally.
Almost the exact same thing, only backwards. Yeah.
And not 2 hours.
Well, you get me with a band I like, it's always 2 hours.
But yeah, I was very much looking forward to talking to a longtime friend. Like I said, Wilson's got a new record, their third, Tasty Nasty, out on August 24th. And it's a bit of a curveball. And as you'll hear me say in the interview... I kind of had come to the realization that Wilson as a whole is a band that constantly throws me as a listener curveballs, and I've been around almost since the inception of the band, honestly. And I realized after listening to my episode with Craig Owens that sometimes when I say that, it makes me sound like a pretentious prick, and it's not the intention. It's just more or less to when I make comments about something, I want people to realize that it's not me speaking out of my ass. It's that I have been a fan of this band since, since they were basically an opening band on an all-local show, and I remember just being like, holy fuck, this band's got it. I don't know what it is, but it's that thing when you see a band that just kills you live, where you're like, if this band doesn't get in its own way and shit, and the stars align, this band's gonna make it. They have that it factor, and I definitely was proven correct in my initial assumption of the band.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, especially after hearing that new record, that it's definitely a curveball, like you said, and it's an interesting transition for me to hear a lot of these bands that, started as a heavy band playing heavy rock, so to speak, like heavy, like playing heavy music, but having those rock and roll elements in there. And then watching them transition from not a heavy band that plays rock, but to just basically being a rock band, you know, like, and it might be weird to make that distinction, but it is very much there, especially with Tasty Nasty in mind.
Yeah, I think longtime fans are really gonna have this weird sense of being lulled into, oh, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be, because I definitely think the front half of the record, it has some curveballs, but you're not totally like, oh, this isn't. There's still heavy guitars. There's still the classic kind of Wilson moments, tongue-in-cheek lyrics, kind of having a good time. But honestly, it's once you get into Summertime Treat / Tasty Nasty, it's sort of the title track, and Act My Age. It's really when you start getting into the change of the record. I mean, Spanish Coffee, I'm very much looking forward to this record coming out and people seeing it, because I know when I played it for my wife, it got a very, like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, and I don't know where it came from, and
right.
And I think it really will challenge the listeners to kind of be like, okay, we kind of went from like really fun poppy affairs, you know, the two songs before it, into this kind of classical guitar pop song, you know, with, I mean, I'm not trying to give too much away, but it's very interesting. But then, you know, the album finishes pretty strong. Like, I mean, Fuck Up My High is, you know, it's the newest single out currently, and it's got a very good vocal hook, and I think lyrically it's something you can relate to, whether it be a relationship or a person or anyone in your life that basically ruins your good times. And you know, as you'll kind of hear in the conversation with Kyle, and if you go back and listen to my conversation with Chad, the singer, a little while ago, you'll kind of hear some the guys alluding to the fact of a lot of the struggles they were going through leading up to writing this new record, writing some really dark tunes just from being in those places. And interestingly enough, you know, I don't know if it'll be like a Deftones Zeros thing where there's this whole record that we kind of wrote in demo form. You'll never hear it, but I would kind of be interested to hear what a very moody or pissed off or whatever Wilson would sound like. I think the only song really we can look to from the past would be Viking Pussies Fuck Off, which we actually found out about the origin of that song. So
yep. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely this has just been a really interesting ride. I wasn't as into Wilson as John is, but
that's a little bit harder kind of a new for you.
Yeah, it was a little different, for me, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy listening to it. Actually, it's funny. I was cleaning my basement when I was listening to Tasty Nasty, and when the Spanish Coffee came on, that was the first song that I like stopped what I was doing and had to like walk over to my phone and make sure, like, because I thought my phone had messed up. Like I started playing somebody else.
Yeah,
you know, or something, and I was like, "What is the deal with this?" Yeah, and I was like, "No, okay, yeah, we're still on track."
Well, I think that's as good a place as any, really, to segue into our conversation with Kyle Landry, the guitar player for Wilson, and we will talk to you in the outros. So, we have the pleasure of talking to Kyle Landry, the guitar player of Wilson. How are you doing?
Oh, I got a full belly, and I'm doing very well.
Would you say it was tasty nasty?
Thank you for asking.
Your food?
Oh, it was tasty and greasy, so yes, if greasy constitutes as nasty, absolutely.
I don't know. As the purveyors of fuckery, I think that's a question only you can answer.
That's true. Well, if I have to answer it, I would say yes.
Well, there we go. Straight from the source.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
I'm interested to, because I sent Dan the link of the new record, so I those who will listen to this know from me talking to Chad about a month or so ago, I have a very long history with the band. That being said, I've not really talked to Dan all this week about what he thought of the record or his association with the band. So I'd like to quickly get Dan's thoughts on the new record and the band as a whole.
Oh man!
Yeah,
wow.
let's put Dan on the spot and make Dan talk about the new record.
Man, he's only doing this to me because he knows I'm a notorious music critic. But man, I thought it was pretty good, man. And no, like I definitely think it's the most different sounding record because I listened to all three this week, and I definitely think it's the most.
All three of the songs that are out, you say?
No, the full record, the three records.
I listened to the whole record. And I listened to
you listened to the full album.
The other two
great.
too, yeah. So, but yeah, no, man, I thought this one was a little bit more. I don't know, like I feel like more people are gonna appreciate this one. Overall, I can't really. I only listened to it once, but
that's okay.
My basement, but I got my basement clean.
I definitely got to say, it's no surprise. I mean, really, since Standing on the Reel and then what would eventually become Full Blast Fuckery, it's kind of weird when you listen to a band's EPs and the songs live a certain way and you see the songs kind of progressing. And for those who may be listening and not know this, I remember when you replaced oh god, who was the guitar player before you?
Joel Matthews was his name. Shout out to Joel Matthews.
Before he left and went and did Legend for a little bit. But I remember when there's a video or a photo I found recently of when we went and saw you play at Max, like one of your first shows. You had a shaved head and all that, and it was like, wow, baby Kyle. And
yeah.
And at that point, you guys are still playing stuff off of Standing on the Reel and still playing some of the stuff that would become, the next album. And so it's been kind of interesting in preparing for this conversation and thinking about how long you've been in the band and just how much the band has changed just in your time in the band. And something, before I get there that I've never really heard is how you got into Wilson.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny story. So I had a studio in my house at the time that really wasn't my studio. I wanted to get into recording a bit, and I had this weed dealer that seemed to know everything about everything, or something about everything, if you will.
Okay.
And we were talking to him about it, just shooting the shit about like, hey, like, what do you, like, we're looking to get. When I say we, I'm talking about my roommate as well. We're looking to get into recording some stuff, and just that's cool. And he's like, oh yeah, I went to school for that. I'm like, what do you mean you went to school for that? And he never mentioned that. He's like, oh yeah, I got all the stuff. I'll put it in your house. Okay. So this is just the start of the story. I'll condense it a little bit, but he put this giant analog studio in my house, with 16 mic channels. This thing is insane. I had no idea how to set it all up, but I learned how to use it all.
Okay.
And I was doing that, and this band Virginia Wolf at the time wanted to do some demos, so I did some demos for them, and then they needed somebody to fill in for a show, and so I went along with them for a weekend where I was playing with them on Saturday, but that Friday they had a show in Flint with Wilson.
Okay.
And I had played with Wilson in my previous band. So I knew all the guys a little bit. I knew Chad a little bit more from the Airs era, from his old band before Wilson. And so when they played that show, I just got to see them again and just kind of be fresh in their heads. And at that point, that was that. And then the next day I went and I played the show with this Virginia Wolf band, but I had no interest in really joining them. They were very, 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 I don't know, metalcore. It wasn't really my style per se. I was just kind of doing them a favor. And then a couple weeks after that, Jason sent me a message just saying, hey, low key, we might be interested in, we might need someone to fill in for a little while. Would you be interested? And I've been filling in ever since.
It was
That's
kind of
essentially the story of how it started.
It was kind of funny in, when seeing you play for the first couple of times, because I've often said, and, I think even on the interviews I've done with Chad for this, that it seemed like everybody, it's always hard to replace the people that you get into a band on. So it's like, when I saw them opening for Darwin's band initially, with the original 5, it was pretty hard to see everyone leave, when Mike left, when, Joel left, and you're just like, oh, but these are the guys. And, I've said constantly, it's like everybody who replaced the people, and it's no disrespect to the people who came before any of you, but everyone just seemed to fit the vibe a little bit more of what the band should be, I feel like, and what they would become. And it was always weird because it's like Joel, to me, always looked like he should be in a band like Legend, just a down and dirty, like metal core, lots of breakdowns and chugga parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then it's like you joined, and I feel like your style and your playing, like, because at the time you were playing a Gibson Explorer, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I was just like, oh,
you remember correctly.
Somebody who has, the Gibson Explorer kind of has that, really dirty, kind of Thin Lizzy-esque kind of vibe. Like that was your guitar tone back then. And it just kind of had that right.
That was my style back then too, as well. I was very, very much into that style of music, but I was also very, very much into like, that dirty Southern metal shit. Just, I loved it. I lived for it.
That was the thing to me, is that, I felt like Jason and Joel's attack and styles were too kind of mimic that you couldn't differentiate. It just sounded like basically one guitar player could have been playing everything. Whereas I felt like when you finally joined, it's like there was the missing piece of the guitar attack to Wilson. It was, here's this kind of dirty rhythmic playing style to complement Jason's kind of lead, but you're also a capable lead player as well to do some of the harmonies you guys used to do and still do. And it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, I think this kid's the missing piece to, like, guitar-wise of what this band's been going after. And then, Pooey comes in, and then you had Taylor for a little bit, and then eventually James. But it's like it just seemed like everybody fit the pieces where they needed to be. And I don't know if I've ever told you that, or if anyone has ever said that about you that has been around that long, that, like, it just seems like everyone...
No, it's definitely very cool to hear an OG fan's perspective. You've been around longer than me, I guess you could say.
I think you put in more miles and all that. But no, so I mean, when you came in, most of, I believe, Full Blast Fuckery, or what would become Full Blast Fuckery, was recorded and all that. So really, we're going to fast forward and go...
Actually, it wasn't.
No?
No, it wasn't. It was recorded. I was actually in the band for over a year before that record came out.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been in the band now for close to 8 years.
Okay, because the timeline gets kind of wonky.
Time flies, huh?
Yeah, the timeline gets a little wonky because I know they're starting to record and already playing out, like Better Off and some of those other songs before you were.
Right, the songs were most of the songs on the record were written before I joined the band. Okay, for sure, but it wasn't a full length at that point. Actually, kind of funny. Right as Full Blast Fuckery was being conceived, James. That's right when James joined the band.
Yeah.
The last piece to the puzzle that is Wilson now, and he actually wrote "Viking Pussies Fuck Off." James wrote that song in its entirety.
all angry minute and a half of it.
Yeah. He's yeah, he was in like grindcore and stuff back in the day, and like so.
Well, I mean,
that
at that
was
point,
his,
he had
metal flair to bring to the table.
I was gonna say he had just gotten out of like a very popular Italian pop band, like the Fall Out Boy of like Italy or something like that, or Romania.
Yeah, Romania. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm sure he was ready to just start writing some angry shit.
He was a Romanian pop star. He was, I mean, like he'll downplay it. He doesn't really talk about it much, but he was all over MTV and like it's like a big deal over there. And then he came back here to join our stupid band and make no money and tour and because
that's why you
love
join
rock
a band.
and roll.
That's why you join a band to stay poor.
Right.
You stay under a certain tax bracket for the rest of your life. You're good to go.
Yeah, it's funny. It does give you some perspective, though. I mean, he was making actually good money over there as well, and so too for, it just lets you know. I mean, he was over there for about 3 years. Like, that's not really what happiness is when you're doing something that you don't really believe in.
Yeah, if your heart's not in it, it doesn't really matter how good the check is.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to speak a little bit more about you getting to finally and fully as a band getting to write what would become Right to Rise. Like, there was obviously a shift in the band's dynamic and then sound, because I obviously think the whole is writing as opposed to a couple of people. But what what are your memories of writing that record and kind of starting to deviate from the original sound of Wilson?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because really, when I joined this band, I wasn't in a place where I wanted to join another band. I was actually, I mean, I had been a touring musician at that point for a while, even though I was young, and I didn't really want to keep going that route. I was thinking about going to school for recording maybe, or I didn't really know what my next move was. I was 20 years old and trying to figure it out. And Full Blast Fuckery, the direction that Wilson was heading in, and the music that they were playing when I saw them live as a band before I joined it, convinced me, that is something that I want to be a part of. And that was mostly Chad's charisma as a frontman. Once I saw them with Chad, because I did see them before Chad once, and Jason's playing style, that were just, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm in. Like, this is absolutely what I want to do. And Full Blast Fuckery, I didn't have too much writing direction on that record, more because I really believed in what they were already doing. And so I was just playing and, doing my thing. And I was like, you know what? I love what's happening, so I'm going to let this keep happening. And it worked out great. But then coming into Right to Rise, we had a lot of demos coming into that record, probably 20 plus demos. So maybe not a lot by some band standards, but a lot more than what ends up on a record.
Right.
And coming into it, I'm not going to lie, none of us like that record now.
I was going to say...
It's not to say that some of those songs don't have something to them, but all those songs started as something more.
Okay.
And they are, I don't want to slander anyone's name, but the whole process was very contrived, and it was the classic situation where you sign to a label and they want to make the safe moves and put you with producers that they think are going to help you. And we learned a lot from that process, don't get me wrong, like about stripping down songs to their core and learning, like, starting at the core of that song and then, building it back up from there. But I think the biggest problem with that record is that they didn't build up from there. We stripped these demos that we had down to their core, and left them that way and put them out that way. And the personality that was shining through on Full Blast Fuckery and Standing on the Reel was kind of lost in that record. I feel like the personality is not as much in those songs, and that's kind of how we feel as a group. I'm not just speaking for myself there. Not to say that we don't like some of those songs, because we did write all those songs. We feel like there was more to those songs that didn't get to, didn't get to be there.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. And I hear that a lot too, where it's like, well, let's just strip the songs down to their bare bones, and then maybe they'll say build it back up, and sometimes not. But like, as a person that, as the person that wrote the song, it's kind of like, yeah, but aren't we just basically simplifying? What you're really saying is simplifying. It's not really, breaking it down to its core. If you wrote a cool bass song as the bones of the song, but then you add a whole bunch of really cool stuff in, that's where all your flourishes come in. That's where all your personality lives on songs. If you take all that stuff away, you just end up with, generic radio hit number 4 or whatever. And
right. No, I mean, there's definitely a beautiful aspect to stripping something down. I mean, there's, some good comes from that, and there's a lot to learn from the lesson of taking a song that might be too much in certain areas and things, and just, really. But I think the right way to go about that is to take that song, strip it down to its core, make sure that core doesn't fucking suck, and then build it back up from there to turn it into a better song. I don't know. I'm just fucking shooting the shit with you guys.
No, I mean, almost like a rebirth or something. Basically taking
right.
something that was cool, breaking it down to its bare bones essentials, and then building it back into something that's even cooler than it was. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's all that. That's part of the beautiful experience. But I've heard it so many times from bands where it's like, man, we wrote these songs, and we liked them, or we really liked the ideas that we had, and just seeing them kind of push in a different direction could sometimes be disheartening. So I totally feel you on that record, especially because Full Blast is so straight ahead and so crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to Right to Rise, and it's kind of like it's still the same band, you can hear that, but yeah, it definitely, seemed kind of like you guys were, I wouldn't say, because I don't think it's a bad record. I actually quite enjoy it, but
no, the songs that, and there's pretty much what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I don't like the record. It's more that, like, the songs that we enjoy the most now, and the songs are the songs that we really had to fight for. I mean, it was that classic situation where the integrity of the band was, we were fighting to keep it. And you shouldn't have to fight the people that saw promise in what you were already doing. But that is the classic scenario.
So, I had, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's the beauty of this last record, though, is we did exactly what we wanted to do. So, I mean, really, the way that I see it, not to misconstrue this as we don't care about our fans, because we absolutely do, but I don't care if you like it. I don't care if he or she likes it. I don't give a fuck, because I love every song on that record. And that record had nothing to do with anybody else. We got to do exactly what we wanted to do. And that's all that matters for us, because all we were thinking, the place that we were in at that point was, do we want to keep going? I mean, if we want to keep going, pretty much I didn't feel like I up on Right to Rise. That record to me was like, you know, I don't feel totally proud to put that on for people. I don't want to show that to my kids in 10 years and be like, this was me, this is your dad, you know, like it's not the type of record that feels like I gave it my all. And I'm not just speaking for myself here. I'm really speaking for everyone. This last record, we all feel really good about. We're proud to show people. We love what we did, and it was totally unabridged. It wasn't contrived in any way, and yeah, I don't know.
So, you know, one of the last kind of things I want to talk about a little bit, because I think it's very integral to where Tasty Nasty ends up going. So when I had Chad on, he kind of talked about a lot of the things, he echoed a lot of the things that you were saying, or vice versa. And something that he had kind of talked about, and, you know, that I was kind of thinking of now that I didn't really ask him specifically, you know, I spoke more to a lot of the bands you guys toured with on the Right to Rise touring cycle, but I think I've thought of something maybe that I haven't thought of until now talking to you, which is, you know, you look at a lot of the bands you toured with on that tour album cycle, you know, your He Is Legends, your Guars, your Seven Dust, your, you know, all these bands that have been around for a very long time and have kind of had the ups and downs with the industry and so forth. And I kind of had wondered, like, do any of you talk to any of these guys and kind of get anything from them, you know, because like one of the earlier tours I remember you guys doing once Full Blast Fuckery kind of was coming out was getting the only Jason Newsted solo tour, and you know, you got Jason Newsted, who's been in Metallica and Voivod and a ton of other bands, and Mike Mushak from Stained, at the time arguably one of the biggest bands at the time in active rock radio. And, you know, it's like, I assume as a young band, you know, they're probably going to bestow some wisdom and things to you. But then, you know, kind of taking it a step further, now that you are touring full-time as a touring band, and that's like kind of your day job, when you're touring with, like, you know, the Seven Dusts and so forth of the world, are they telling you, like, hey, man, like, you know, you guys have got something going right now, like, don't let someone come in and kind of tell you what they think you should be, or does that not really happen?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. A lot of those, you name the right bands, really. Those bands were bands that definitely gave us that message that, you know, you can't let someone else manipulate your sound, because it just doesn't, you're not going to feel right about it. It's something that you can't, it's a lesson that you almost have to learn through, you know, experience, not just through hearing someone else talk about it. And I guess we learned that lesson. I actually, when you just brought that up, I thought specifically about a band that we toured with that we sound nothing like. We did a short run with a band called Darkest Hour back in the day.
Yeah.
I remember them telling us that, and it was just, they were like, you know what, just no matter what you do, just don't listen to what they're telling you to do, because you'll be so much happier for it in the long run. And I just, you know, remembered that moment after what you just said.
Was that on
and
during
that
their
stuck
own
with
issues?
us.
Yeah, it's a shame that it has to be that way. And you'd mentioned earlier too that, you know, on your newest record, you know, you don't care. I mean, obviously not like in a mean way, but like just what people think. Do you think that there's a potential for people that were diehard fans of the band to kind of reel back whenever they hear it? Or because obviously it's, I mean, from hearing it myself, I can definitely say that it definitely has gone in a different direction than I think maybe people would have been expecting.
Yeah, it's definitely gone in a different direction, but we expected worse from our older fans. We expected our older fans to just straight up, you know, just not get it. But really the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. Sure, there's been some negative about it, but which is to be expected when you make any sort of a stylistic switch. But it's been overwhelmingly positive. It's actually unbelievable to hear what some older fans are saying. I mean, a lot of people have even picked out that the connection between Full Blast Fuckery and this, well, in the songs that we've released thus far. Obviously, they haven't heard the rest of the record like you guys have. But that's crazy to me for someone to pick that out because the records are so different. But I feel like the personality that was on that record is on this record. Like we're fun dudes. We like to make stupid jokes and just make life light, and that's what this whole record is about, and that's what this band is about.
Yeah. So we've talked enough, I think, about the old Wilson. I think let's dedicate maybe an equal amount of time to the new record, since that is what you're here to talk about and promote. And this is going to go up on Sunday, so
sure.
We are going to talk about it a handful of days before it goes up on Friday, August 24th. So Tasty Nasty, we have, for those who are listening currently, there are 3 songs out. Dump Truck, which is the lead-off track on the record. Like a Baller, which was the first single, I guess, technically. And then now you just recently put out Fuck Up My High. And I think it's a pretty good combo of songs to sort of get people into what this record sounds like sonically. Although I definitely think, a song like Spanish Coffee is going to throw some people for a loop. And I definitely have to say Summertime and Act My Age, every time I hear it, I just think it's like, if this isn't in some like summertime American Pie teenage like romp kind of comedy thing that's going to be like a cult classic 10 years later, then whoever's handling your syncs and so forth is just severely fucking up, because that's like and I mean, we're going to have to wait for another summer, but I think if it doesn't end up in like a summertime movie like an American Pie, like someone drastically fucked up on handling that song.
Well, I sure hope you're right on that. But no, I think, there was a lot of thought put into the first 3 songs that would be released. I think we were trying to engage a new audience while at the same time, not, kind of ease in our old fans, not alienate them. Like a song like Fuck Up My High definitely has a lot of older Wilson elements to it. What was that?
I said I think it's definitely got one of the strongest vocal melodies for a chorus that I've heard on anything.
Oh, thanks, man.
I was kind of wondering, in listening to the record from a production standpoint, 2 things. You worked with Evitz, on Full Blast Fuckery, and then I forget the dude's name that you did Right to Rise with, but I know he does like all that remains records.
Johnny Andrews.
That's it, Johnny Andrews.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I know he does like All That Remains albums and so forth, like very radio rock, like hard rock stuff. But
right.
And working with what is it, Steve from the Exies? Is that his name?
That's funny. Scott Stevens.
Okay.
Close enough.
I just
Steve
remember.
Scottins.
Okay, I was going to say, I just remember he was from the Exies, and that's a band that I don't think a lot of people remember. But if I were to play My Goddess, you'd probably be like, "Holy shit, I haven't heard this song in fucking forever." But it's one of those where that song's kind of an undeniable hit, and working with a different producer. Sometimes a lot of bands I love, especially when they work with Evitz, bands go back to him, and they're great records and they sound great. But something I've always kind of admired, and it's always kind of intrigued me about you guys, is that you never seem to go back to do anything the same as you have done before. Like, and I don't know if it's just a timing wise, like, these people aren't available or whatever, but I mean, you couldn't,
that's the biggest criticism that we've gotten, from this new record is, this doesn't sound anything like the Wilson that I know. It's like, well, that record exists. If you want to hear that, go listen to that record. That's why we wrote it. We like it. It's there. So go listen to that.
God. Preach it.
We're moving forward,
it's not like anything new you do from this point on is going to somehow invalidate your previous material, you know. And
right, it's still there.
Frustrating to hear people, because like people do it all the time with like really, with like really big bands. Are like, oh well, I only liked Metallica up until the Black album, and it's like, okay, then just go listen to Master of Puppets for the rest of your life. Who cares? Like,
right.
nobody...
Well, you know what? It's a great song. Like,
right.
Go listen to it. But like, what do you want more of the same song? I don't,
No, because if you
things.
write the same stuff over and over again, everyone hates you. But if you change too much, everyone hates you. You know,
it's right? Like, it's a double-edged sword. It doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to please everyone, so you got to progress. And back to what we were talking about, as far as producers, working with Scott for this record was incredible. The guy he got the band right from the very first time. Actually, Jason and Chad went out there and did a writing session with him before the rest of us got involved. And from that moment, the first two songs that came back, we're so shocked. Like, we knew right from that moment, this guy gets it, and he never... I went back with them for many more writing sessions after that. And he never had a guitar in his hand or anything like that. He knows how to bring the best out of you. It's more just like a guide in the room. And it's just, he really was like a sixth member for writing this record. He was very helpful, and he believed in the project enough. He took it on as his obligation to produce it. And like when it actually came down to needing to record the record, and it's unbelievable. The guy he had at the time had a #1 co-write on Active Rock out for, I think it was a Shinedown song. He's done a lot with a lot of great bands, but he definitely didn't need to take us on as a project, so he did it because he believed in what we were doing and what we were doing with him, and it's awesome,
Having had Evitz on a while ago and asking him, just some things that he does as a producer to bands, where he's like, sometimes it's not, I don't let the band sit down when they record, because that's not how they play it and so forth. And, he's very much about the real approach to how it's going to be played. And,
yeah.
I can't speak to really Johnny Andrews at all. Like, I don't know much about his producing style. But I'm kind of wondering, with you guys collectively working with 3 different producers, what's something that you've learned from each one that you take into the next project that you have now, harnessed between, these 3 records over 10 years?
Well, it's hard as far as Evitz, I've never actually met Evitz in person. That was Chad, Jason, and Pooey that went out there to do that. That record was done on an extreme budget at the time. We couldn't fly the whole band out there, and we couldn't afford to fly ourselves out there, so we made do with what we could get done. But I know just some lessons that those guys brought back. I mean, they learned a lot from him just about tone, for one. I guess Evitz is just a tone freak.
Oh yeah.
But Jason's a tone freak himself. But just the rawness of an Evitz recording, like if you listen to everything he's done, there's just something so raw about it. It's a weird adjective because it doesn't really mean anything. But you get what I'm saying. But then when it, like with Johnny, like I said, like we learned a very important lesson about stripping songs down, that really we did take with us and will always have, where we learned how to write songs. with Johnny. And that's a huge lesson. We learned like proper techniques and ways to write a good song. Not just like, you know, a bunch of riffs and just figure out something over it, but how to write a good song. And then with Scott, I think, something about just his process that's just beautiful. I don't even know how to describe it. But when you're sitting there in at his house in his home studio, and he's got a great little setup, making you feel very comfortable. And he's just, I don't even know. I don't know how to say it, man. It's just it's the magic. When it's there, you know it's there. When it's not, you know it's not. There's something about it.
You can tell when somebody's just working with you because it's their job versus really believing in what you're doing and having a vested actual interest in what you guys come up with. And that's huge.
Right, exactly.
You know, we do a lot of interviews. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, after you.
I would say we do a lot of interviews where it's always like, yeah, you know, we worked with this person and they helped us do this, but it's always such a sterile, you know, professional kind of relationship. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's that always makes me happy to hear when bands, you know, like they actually sat down with somebody and made something together versus it be just
Absolutely.
This kind of like, what do you got? Or they're not sitting there judging you or berating you for not having, you know, the songwriting skill that they were expecting, or, you know, like it's really cool. Right. Just to hear a nice, you know, like bullshit free, ego-less kind of situation there. So, I mean, and that's, and considering his, you know, his track record, that's really cool. Like that's awesome to hear.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I mean, he was a huge part of the process for us, and he flew out to Detroit actually and spent a week with us, which is not a lot of time, but we crammed in that time to do our pre-production out here, and we spent that week doing 12-hour days for 6 days straight in our practice space, just hammering out every song and just making sure we all had it down just the way that we needed it to be, and, you know, making necessary changes and just building exactly what we were going to go in and record. And then he flew back home. We had another week home, and then a week later we flew out to LA and recorded the record. We spent 5.5 weeks out there.
So I had talked about already talking to Chad before Like a Baller came out officially as a single. In our conversation, we talked about his trip to Asia and Thailand and all that kind of stuff. Adversely, you know, that seems to be the focal point in a lot of the pressers and the new band bio and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I've kind of wondered what was going on with all of you, the rest of you at that point, and were any of you equally kind of going through your own stuff? And I'll kind of preface it by saying, you know, Chad was, you know, I had brought up to Chad that, you know, at this point, everyone in the band seems to be doing the best that they are, but kind of going into Right to Rise and that whole album cycle, it's like, you know, James, and, you know, I don't necessarily mean to put his shit out on Front Street, but I mean, I think it's pretty well documented. But it's like, because I already said it in the other interview and Chad backed it up, but it's like everyone basically lost the relationships that they were in, marriages and so on and so forth. I think you're the only one that went into it and out of it with the same person that you went into the album cycle with, and you're recently engaged. Congratulations on that, by the way. And
thank you.
It's one of those things where most of you are so keep to yourself, and Chad's more outspoken and outgoing.
Yeah, that's true.
So I kind of wondered, you know, with Chad being so outspoken about his not coming into a Jesus moment, but like the things that led to him kind of coming to where the foundation of where this record was coming from, the not giving a fuck anymore and so forth. What were you guys going through, and when he comes back from this life-altering experience, what were your reactions to it?
Yeah, well, I can't speak too much to the other three guys. I can a little bit, but at least for me, I know all of us at that point were going through a very rough time. We were going through a very rough time with our situation with our management and things such as that I will drop right about there. But at the same time, we were also all going through some pretty crazy and ridiculous personal life issues. Pui's had some very difficult times with his parents. I lost my mother around that time. Actually, I was on Shiprocked when my mother passed.
That sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Everyone was going through some pretty crazy shit. Jason had just broken up with his lady, and same with James. There was housing issues, just people not being able to stay where they were living, just all sorts of issues. And we were writing some very dark tunes as a result of it. It was actually our management now that kind of lifted us up, and we're like, hey, guys, this is not, I understand, they loved the songs we were giving them, but they at the same time were saying like, this isn't what, this isn't the Wilson, this isn't the fun vibe that you guys, have been wanting to bring to the table. I don't know how to say it, but
where's those fun, happy guys that,
exactly. It was a very rough time for everybody. Just all around, we're in a very dark place, and coming into this we just kind of, it was almost, it's interesting how you said that we're all in pretty good places from what you can see, and it almost feels like it started with the music. We made that switch, and all of a sudden things started to fall into place for all of us. I'm currently standing in my front yard. I bought a house in February.
And you got a pig?
I have a pig.
Oh, hell yeah.
I have a cat.
Jason's got those weird fucking naked cats that don't have fur.
Yes, he does.
Are those expensive?
I think they're really expensive, actually. That shows you how good this record's going to do.
Yeah.
I grew up with cats, 3 of them, and my wife is allergic, so I have not had a cat in like 15 years.
Yeah, I hope this record does well so Jason can pay off his cats. Yeah, we're all just doing this record so Jason can pay off his cats. Actually, we're forfeiting our own profits until he pays them off, and then the rest of us will get paid. But
so when you open the
what you do for your friends is.
So when you open the new record and you see that all the publishing goes to Hairless Cat Publishing.
Right. Actually, our publishing names are pretty freaking ridiculous. I don't even remember what everyone else's is. I don't even remember what my own is, but they're all just super retarded, really.
So, I mean...
But yeah, anyways, yeah.
I'm very, having sat with this record for the last probably 2 weeks or so, like I said, it's a very interesting listen, and admittedly, because I threw Dan under the bus to throw him and be like, oh, what do you think of it? But I think it's only fair that I say how I feel about it, being, a long fan. And like Dan, I went and listened back to the whole discography, and I remember how bummed I felt when I listened to Full Blast Fuckery, especially more so the re-recorded versions of stuff that was on Standing on the Reel, because it didn't have the same charm that the basically quote unquote the demos had. I became that elitist asshole who was like, well, it sounded better on the EP than the re-recorded where there was money into it. And
Right.
But then eventually, you kind of, if you're a real fan of music and a real fan of the band, you kind of understand that, you know, sometimes you reimagine something and it's an ever evolving thing. And so from Full Blast, you know, it took me a little bit of time to get to Full Blast Fuckery, and then when Right to Rise came out and some of the, you know, Right to Rise the single, which Chad said, like, that wasn't even supposed to be a single, let alone the song as it was, let alone this album title. He didn't really elaborate on that, and that's fine, but...
That's all true.
It was one of those things that, you know, when you get to a song like The Flood and stuff like that, like, I remember being like, what the fuck is this? This isn't my Wilson. And, you know, it took me... Not my Wilson. Yeah, it took me a little bit of time to really understand what you guys were collectively doing, and just, you know, when you see it live, it kind of makes more sense, you know, these songs and how they fit with old songs and so forth. And so when hearing Like a Baller, I was definitely like, what the fuck is this? And
right.
It was very weird, but then it's like, you know, as I kind of heard it more... And then, you know, like, Dump Truck came, because, like, you know, Chad sits there and, you know, he's texting me, and he's like, there's no singing, or, I mean, not no singing, there's no scream vocals, there's no this. He's referencing bands where I'm like, dude, like, he's like, oh, like, Offspring, and so on and so forth. I'm like, man, what the fuck? And so, you know, when I end up listening to this record as a whole, and it's like, okay, like, Dump Truck kind of offers a little bit of something for the older fans. There's still some heavy riffs and some good riffing going on, but, you know, like... I've kind of alluded to from the get-go of everything after Standing on the Reel, when I really saw the band a whole shitload, because you guys were just a local band, you know, out and playing, is everything took time to understand how it fit into the entity that is Wilson, that's ever-changing, but that there's still this omnipresent funness that's happening, and it's definitely when you go see these songs live that you see how they fit into the rest of the catalog. And so now that I've had the album for, you know, 2 weeks and really kind of sat with it and then kind of put it around some of the other stuff, it's like, it's not as jarring as it is when you hear some of these songs individually by themselves, unattached from everything else that you've done. And I'm hoping that longtime Wilson fans, and seemingly everybody, you know, from the House of Fuckery Facebook group and so forth, it seems like everyone's on board, and it seems like everyone is very much like me, where it's like, it's not what I was expecting, but I've kind of come to like it, and I've come to grow and expect that you guys are going to constantly challenge us as fans.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like I was saying earlier, like the old fans are getting it, and the fun lightheartedness that you're saying has carried through. I mean, that's really that's the identity of the band. That's the true identity of the band. It's not the sound, because the sound is going to change, and it's going to continue to change. Us as people, we're continuing to change, just like everybody else, you know. But I can assure you that change, from this point, actually from before this point, but forward, is unaltered from anything outside of Wilson. Like, this is us, and this is what we want to do, and that's that, you know.
Do you enjoy wearing...
We've learned our lesson, I guess you could say.
Do you enjoy wearing the lighter colors as opposed to having to wear the black jeans and the black t-shirts and everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's different. It's a fun little change. We're like, well, if we're going to put out a silly-ass record, we might as well dress like silly idiots and make it fun, you know? I mean, screw it. And honestly, I'm never going back from the fanny pack.
Oh,
Tell you what.
My wife made fun of my fanny pack I bought for a friend of mine that I've just been using since I haven't been able to give it to him. And she's like, this fucking fanny pack. And then the other day we went, I think, to a show or something, or we went to the beach. And then she goes, can you put my keys in there? Can you put my cell phone in there? And I was like, oh, look how not dumb the fanny pack is now.
Yeah, not so dumb, because honestly, I keep everything in that little thing. So I put my wallet, keys, phone in there, of course. You know, you get that stuff out of your pants, but then that's general stuff. Of course, you can just store that in your pants, but there's things you can store that you can't just store in your pants. Like your penis. No.
I mean,
Like,
if you're married, you're gonna have to start putting your penis in that fanny pack because it doesn't go with you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an old Sam
no, but the
Kinison
fanny
joke.
pack goes with me. That's the thing. So, yeah.
You hit a certain
Like,
age of practicality.
Like I had 3 different options of weed pens on this tour, and they were all in my fanny pack.
You should hit up
Fantastic.
Chuck Billy from Testament. He's got weed pens out now.
I don't even smoke cigarettes, and I kept a lighter in there. You know, I don't even know. I had a screwdriver in there. I had all these things in there that just stayed in the fanny pack, and I always had it on me, and there was always a reason to pull it out.
The
penis as
screwdriver
well.
or the
Yeah.
penis? Okay.
Yeah. Always talking about my penis. When there's a euphemism, it's not a euphemism. I'm talking about my penis.
It's funny. The euphemism is actually longer than my penis is currently.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's, nice. My penis is about as long as the mono-ultra microscopic silicovolcanic, but
Hey, that's a lot of
You
words
know,
to fit in
to
someone's
each-
mouth.
yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it is.
I'm gonna do something different with you that I've not done, but I heard a podcast today that and it's not showing you my penis or anything like that, but or penis related, but it's they always
Okay.
end the episode with rapid fire questions, just really silly nonsensical shit, and I literally don't have anything written down, so this will probably be really fucking weird. So we'll
for it.
do. Dan, do you have 5 questions you could ask? Could we do 10?
5 questions? They're
Yeah.
going to be really random then.
Yeah, fuck it. Okay, so we're gonna do 10. I'll do one. Dan will do one, and we'll go until we have 10. So, what is your favorite song off of this new record?
Oh, God. This type of shit's tough.
That's why
we'll
the
say
rapid fire.
that changes constantly, but right now, probably money.
Interesting.
Okay, so how many skinless cats do you have? 2?
That's Jason. That's got the
0.
skinless cats.
Jason has 2.
Oh, I messed that up.
Yep, we're still trying to pay him off.
When the band ends up making millions, they all get skinless cats from Jason's litter.
Well,
When the band makes millions, it depends on how many millions we're talking. Jason will pay off his cats, and then we can consider getting more.
The band will be replaced by skinless cats.
I had a great question based on skinless cats, and now I don't. Okay. Well, I guess that was my question then. John?
All right. So you hang out with Joe Gall all the time, and he loves pizza.
Oh,
Where is the most random place you've eaten pizza with Joe Gall?
Most random place? I don't know. Someplace in some other state, some small town somewhere, probably. Shout out to Hound Dogs in Columbus.
I hate Columbus, but I might have to go there if they got good pie.
That might make you appreciate Columbus.
I mean, I hate the fucking Buckeyes, but
Well, don't we all?
yes. Dan? I told you they're gonna be random, dude.
If you can pick one record to keep for the rest of your life, and then one record that you would destroy that not only you would lose but everyone would lose, what would they be and why?
Oh, you're Thanosing some records?
I would keep my dental records, and I would throw away every. Let's see. Oh, this is tough. I don't know. I'm not going to trash someone else's record, so that's that. I'll throw away your dental records.
You probably should.
Yeah, because you probably have tons of cavities and shit.
Oh yeah.
All right, so
Next question.
Dan may not know this. You are a handy man. You made a van air conditioning unit out of what the fuck was it? It was a cooler, a fan, and some ducting or whatever the fuck that shit was.
It was actually a bathroom ceiling fan,
Okay,
and some metal ductwork.
okay. What is the most random thing you have constructed while on tour, and what was it?
Random and on tour, that's probably the most, but also relevant. So, I mean, I haven't really, I build out of necessity, so random isn't really.
I thought the Altoid
thing.
phone charger was one of my favorites that you made.
Oh, you remember that? Wow.
I do remember that because that was so fucking crazy.
Man, that thing, just the thought of that pisses me off because I made that long before all those phone chargers came out that are out now.
I mean, if you could make me one, fuck that. Make some Wilson ones. You could. That's your new merch gimmick.
So I made that Altoids tin one, but the thing is, it wasn't efficient. I made it out of, I used a 9-volt battery, and I had a 5-volt voltage regulator on it, so I would render it down to 5 volts, and then the phone would recognize it as charging, because that's all phones charge off 5-volt chargers. And I was like, oh, sweet. But it drained the 9-volt after one full charge. So one charge of your phone would be equivalent to one 9-volt. So definitely not efficient. However, it wasn't till like 3 years later that all these freaking battery-powered phone chargers came out, and I just thought to myself, I'm like, God damn it. If I'd have put a little more effort into this fucking thing and just built it out of an A123 battery, which is what they're doing most of the time now, or some other type of fucking battery, I could have perfected that, and that could have been my $1 million idea.
You could have had your own hairless cats off of that.
I could have had my own goddamn hairless cats, but instead I'm stuck with a pig and a cat that has hair.
Dan, your turn.
All right.
Every time I shave my cat, hair comes back.
Samurai sword or medieval broadsword? Your weapon of choice.
I'll take a medieval broad all day. You're talking like a sword with big tits that are like hanging out of a corset?
That have 2 beers with ready to go.
What is it, St. Pauli's girl?
Yeah.
Is St. Pauli's girl now a broadsword?
I'm into it.
All right. My 4th question. What is the craziest thing you have witnessed the 2 Zach Galifianakis lookalikes doing?
Railing cocaine off a pair of tits? I don't know. That's up there. I guess it could get crazier. One dressed up like Mike Tyson in a Mike Tyson skin suit, looking just like Mike Tyson, by the way. Just like unbelievable. It's a few $1,000 skin suit. And the other one carrying a small child that's not really a child, but it looks just like one in a stroller. Just strolling down, making money on the strip. That was pretty wild to see.
Dan, your next question. Question number 4 for you.
Yeah, I was like, I've completely lost track because I'm just making these up as I go. Norman Bates or Norman Reedus?
Norman Bates.
Really?
Yeah, why not?
He's more
Got a fucking
well-groomed.
problem?
He's more well-groomed than Norman Reedus.
That's true.
Right.
And
He's a little mama's boy bitch, though, so maybe not.
Kind of, but a little brutal, too.
Yeah, well, that's just mommy issues.
And my last random question for you is, so you have a penchant for climbing very high scaffolding and so forth. What is the sketchiest thing you've climbed?
Okay, well, the sketchiest, I've never thought I'm not going to be able to get down because I trust myself. But
Dude,
the sketchiest
Dirt
was in
Fest
Port
was fucking
Huron.
sketchy.
Oh, you think that was sketchy? I climbed 40 feet up at Loudon Life in
That's
Kentucky.
true. I forgot about that.
And when I saw that picture of Jason standing underneath me looking up at me, and there's 5 of Jasons before it gets to me, that's when I was like, yeah, that's death. That's death.
Dan, your last question.
But no, the sketchiest was Port Huron. I'm just saying that was the sketchiest because in Port Huron, I found out after I climbed that the weight limit on the thing was 125 pounds.
You fatty.
The weight limit on what I was hanging from, which was some sort of a sketchy light structure. I wasn't that high up, but then again, my head was still probably a good 15 feet above the ground. So it was that was the sketchiest. It was swinging back and forth. I knew when I was up there that I shouldn't be up there, but I didn't know until I got there.
Dan, your last question.
All right, well, speaking of death, if you have 2 choices, would you rather burn to death or freeze to death?
Oh,
fuck. Ugh. Burn to death, I guess.
Ooh, really?
Because it would be a little bit quicker. Although the freezing to death, you would go numb before you die.
But
you know what? I
numb.
just fucking hate the cold.
You hate the cold, really? Well,
yeah,
hold on. I think I remember talking to you guys after you did that Canada run with Bam, and you guys were like, that was some of the coldest fucking drives we've ever endured.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. Well, that was the coldest run ever. We did a Canada run in December. What do you expect?
I remember Jason being severely sick.
We all had our pass of that same illness, probably.
Well,
All right, guys.
that was our 10 random questions. Your new album, Tasty Nasty, comes out this Friday, August 24th, via Red Music. We always like to end these episodes with a song, but before we do that, can you plug your socials where people can find you and the band? Maybe give a slight glimpse of what's coming up the rest of the year, and then we'd like to pick a song to end these episodes out with, so what would you like us to play it out to as well?
Whatever the fuck you want to play, man. Just make sure it's one of those 3 songs that's already out. And,
I'm going to download something else and I'm going to play something completely different.
Yeah. Why don't you play that new song that just popped up as our single on Spotify yesterday? It's not even our song. It just kind of happened on there every day.
Yeah, I saw that.
But it's kind of funny. So play that. But anyways, thefuckery.com. Check it out. And, if you want to follow me specifically, I guess, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but I guess just check out Kyle_E_Landry on Instagram, because I don't really do the Twitter thing, but I do. But
you did
I don't.
for me. You did it for me the other day. You retweeted my tweet.
Yeah, I try, but I don't.
Well, thank you again for taking the time tonight. Very much looking forward to... do you want to plug your in-store signing thing that you have coming up, I believe was it Ferndale?
Yes. Well, we're doing an FYE signing at the Berkeley FYE on August 24th, the day the record comes out. So, come. It's at 7 p.m.
Awesome. I'm going to try to make my
all right, dudes. Good talking to you guys.
Yep.
Yeah, you too, man. Have a good night.
And maybe I'll see you at that He Is Legend show downtown.
See ya, man.
All right, talk to you.
See ya.
So that was our conversation with Kyle Landry, guitar player for Wilson. Again, their new record, Tasty Nasty, is coming out August 24th via Red Music. You can hear the first 3 songs. Well, they're not the first 3 songs, but you can hear 3 songs from the new record. You can hear Dump Truck, Like a Baller, and Fuck Up My High. And, Dan, what'd you think of that conversation?
Well, gee, John, thanks for putting me on the spot, man. Dan, what did you think about the album? I'm like, it's an album that has songs on it that you can listen to. Yeah. No, it was a good talk, though, man. I like those long interviews. Just getting to hear what the thought process was behind the change.
I think for me, the hard part and why I tried to involve you so quickly into the interview was, and like I had mentioned in the intros, basically, I think if you know somebody for as long as I've known the Wilson guys, I'm aware of the fact that I'm probably going to dominate the conversation just because I have so much history with them and know so much about them personally that I wanted to include you as much as I could, but then I kind of realized at times it's like I'm talking about an era of the band before anybody would have been even aware of who they were because they were just a local band at that point.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there like, I don't know, man. I listened to 3 records. What do you what do you want from me? But no, it was definitely a lot of fun, and it's going to be interesting to see what the overall fan reaction is to the album. I think it might be a little divisive, but I actually found it a little refreshing just because of the amount of like metal and death metal and stuff I listened to. It was kind of nice to listen to something that wasn't that for a change. You know?
But it's one of those things like, sometimes, like I said, you just see one of those bands and you're like, that band's got something. But it's like to see it at such a local level like I did with these guys, it's like I've never experienced that. I've never seen the band go from a local, being the local opener on an all-local show to then being the band that's going out as direct support for Guar or He Is Legend or Seven Dust or all these influential bands that I've been listening to for a long time. And these are just friends I've known for, a decade or so. That's never happened, and it's still weird to me.
Yeah, they can be a little different. And where I come from, I live in St. Louis, so we don't really have anything like that here. Well, what do we have? We have the Urge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
and
here
that's
we
about
have.
it.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, on the day as we're recording this, Aretha Franklin dying, and a lot of people claiming, Detroit. It's kind of like a weird gang that I'm seeing these posts where it's like Aretha Franklin, Detroit, and it's like, are we throwing up our sets now? Like, oh, Detroit, what? But I mean, like I was sending Dana some stuff earlier, some vinyl and stuff I was listening to, and I threw on my Still Remains Serpent record, and I was like, oh, throw on a local band, because here in Grand Rapids they are a local band technically. And then Dan goes, local to you, heroes to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Still Remains is one of my favorite bands. I mean, they were a big influence on the band I was in, back in the day, and with the keyboards and the metalcore and the we weren't really as good as singers, but it's definitely one of those things where I just never really got to experience that. If it was anything close, it was like a band, a couple states over or something, that you drive to go see.
Yeah.
But they already would have to be a big deal by the time you got there. I mean, because we were so close to Nashville and there was so much cool stuff happening in Nashville, but really not a whole lot of insanely great stuff happening in St. Louis. The last band I can remember that came out of St. Louis that was a big deal was a band called In the Midst of Lions.
Wouldn't Story of the Year have been?
Oh, yeah. We did have Story of the Year, but they were
still
Big
have
Monkey,
them.
and they weren't. They were kind of St. Louis. Like, Big Blue Monkey was huge in St. Louis,
right?
And but they were a new metal band back then, And it's weird because then they moved to California, I think.
I thought they all still.
No. They moved to California and then they came back to St. Louis. So they went to California, got big, and then came back and kind of played it off as if they were, had always been like, yeah. And St. Louis people are not like that easily. Like, we're all kind of jerks down here. So we were like, yeah, but you went to California to get your claim to fame because you could never really make it out of St. Louis. It's just a toxic music scene down here, man.
Yeah, it's interesting when Wilson kind of came out. It's like, oh, this is the next step of this next, Iggy and the Stooges kind of raw power sound that we haven't, the dirty Detroit rock and roll sound we haven't had in a while since the White Stripes kind of hinted at it with their garage rock and stuff like that and the Von Bondies. And, Wilson to me at the time was the next evolution of the down and dirty blue collar rock that I felt like we didn't have for a long time. And, I kind of make a reference to Thin Lizzy, and, Wilson had that kind of, they looked like a band that when you saw them, they looked like a gang. They had back patches with their own fucking band name on it. They, wore all black and looked like a rough and tumble biker crew. And I feel like at the time when they were coming out, that's what was missing from rock and roll, was that sense of danger and urgency in the music. And it's not necessarily the same look or aesthetic that the band has, but I think the interesting thing is I feel like that band still is so tight-knit, and you'll hear it in the interview, and you heard it in the interview, that I think that, they just basically... There's something that's a little bit dangerous and punk rock about not giving a fuck anymore about anything. And this band definitely has it on this new record in spades.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he basically said as much in the interview, and that was pretty powerful. Like, I don't really care, how it's received. I know that I did everything that I wanted to do on this record.
I'm going to call out Chad for a minute. He took the post down pretty quickly. But a while ago, when I think Like a Baller came out, there was an Instagram post where he screenshotted some quote-unquote fan posted like, fuck this band, they had one good EP or something like that was hard, and then they sold out and blah, 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 blah. And Chad was just like, don't be like this guy. Be a fan with an open mind and so on and so forth. And I was like, dude, the fucking balls on Chad to like call out a supposed fan for... voicing their own opinion, but for being like, dude, well, fuck you. Like, and Chad pretty much said as much in the interview we did, where he was like, dude, if you don't like what we're doing, well, then fuck you. We don't want you. And that's been the sentiment that the band has had. And like Chad said, and I'm just gonna echo the sentiment, that's the most punk rock fucking thing ever. Like, if you don't like it, fuck you. We don't care.
Right. Yeah. I've got my own opinions on that sort of stuff, but I feel like everybody. Well, that's just it, though. Everybody's free to have their own opinion and talk about whatever they want to talk about. But it'll be interesting to see, how the populace at large handles this Wilson record. And I think if you go into it, like you said, if you go into it with an open mind, it's fine.
Yeah.
And that's totally what I did when I went into it, because I didn't. I mean, after listening to their first two records, I had no idea what to expect. From Tasty Nasty. So, I went into it just kind of like I had no real reservations or, anything that I've been listening to for years leading up to that, to where I was going to get butthurt over it, if it didn't sound the way I thought it was supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what the rest of the crowd has to say about it. Socials. If you would like to keep up with Kyle and Wilson, you can follow them at Wilson on Facebook and www.houseoffuckery.com. Twitter is Wilson Parties, and you can follow Kyle at Kyle Landry. Instagram is Wilson Parties and Kyle_E_Landry. You see photos of his pigs and his cat and the house that he's been remodeling that he bought, and his new not new fiance, but his fiance, and all the adventures of Wilson working out at Planet Fitnesses and all that kind of stuff. And again, the new album comes out this Friday, August 24th. Tasty Nasty is the name of it, out via Red Music. And you can catch them if you are in the Ferndale area on the 24th at an FYE. Just go follow their socials. I think they plugged everything. I don't want to say a specific one because I don't have that information handy. And if you would like to keep up with our show sponsor, The Bean Bastard, you can find them at thebeanbastard.com. Pick you up some delicious roasted coffee. There is a new mobile rig coming, and I can't wait to go to Buffalo in December and go see this thing and get some delicious coffee straight from the source. Maybe I will be able to send Dan some fresh coffee.
Please.
You can also find them at The Bean Bastard on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like to keep up with the podcast, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at JonsuntitledPodcast. Tweet at us at JonsuntitledPod, and email us at JonsuntitledPod@gmail.com. Dan is going to tell you where he can be found and why we like 5-star ratings and all the review stuff.
Well, I can be found at Discuss Metal Dan on Twitter. Can be found on Facebook at facebook.com/discography discussion. And if you would like to send me an email, you can send me an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Let's talk about 5-star reviews for a second, shall we?
Let's.
I don't think we have stated enough how much we love 5-star reviews here on John's Untitled Podcast. We love them. They make us feel good. They make us feel happy. Me and John give each other Skype high fives. Look it up. It's a thing. But beyond that, we live in a world that is filled with algorithms. Facebook has algorithms for what posts you see. iTunes has algorithms on what bands you recommended. And much like band recommendations, podcasts work very much the same way. You see, if you're listening to our podcast, that's information that we need to know, number one, via some sort of starred rating system that they have been nice enough to put in place for us. And they use that 5-star rating system to determine whether or not your friends or family or people that listen to the same podcast that you listen to that are not ours would be recommended our podcast. That way everything fits. All the puzzle pieces are in place. And that's why we ask for reviews. Reviews help us get better search results whenever you're searching for a podcast that's featuring an interview with your favorite band. We've probably talked to them. So you're going to get that recommendation. So that's really the main reason we ask for these reviews, is because they give us really positive recommendations and they let us show up on the internet as a whole.
And another way to support the podcast is to go over to Patreon. That's right, we are on Patreon. We are those people who are at the street corner of Podcast Avenue begging you for some spare change to get a meal or whatever we spend our money on. Booze.
New car battery,
Yeah. But if you would like to monetarily donate to the podcast, you can simply go over to patreon.com/JonsuntitledPodcast. There will be a video of me explaining what the money is going for. At the time of me making that video, Dan was not involved in the podcast, but we are kind of in the mode of kind of tooling some perks and adding some things. We're going to be adding some extra episodes, which we're going to be recording soon. But basically, we just want we need some financial help doing some of the things that we are looking to do. The podcast isn't free to host and do all that kind of stuff, so we are basically just trying to offset some of those costs. And then if we end up making some extra money, you know, it'll be dumped into getting better equipment, new cameras, new computers, so on and so forth. And then potentially down the road, if we get to go to some festivals or whatever, maybe Dan and I can actually do these in person, and you know, the world will implode from the awesomeness that is happening at that exact moment.
That would be amazing. I mean, it'd be a great way for the planet Earth to go out.
With a bang, like it started.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we are going to end this episode, as we always do, with a song. And as you heard Kyle nonchalantly pick a non-song, he said just to pick something from the first 3 songs that have been played off of the new record. And, you know, I said I really enjoyed the vocal melody and the chorus for Fuck Up My High, which is the newer song. So I think that's going to be the one I'm going to play. We're going to play Fuck Up My High off of their new album, Tasty Nasty, out this Friday, August 24th, via Red Music. You can still go, I believe, in the next day or so, as of we're recording this, they are going to be linking physical pre-orders to the record. Hopefully it'll come out on vinyl. Everything else has at this point. But follow them. Keep up with what they're doing. If they come to a town near you, go see them. Follow them on their socials. Tell them that you were sent to the House of Fuckery by us here at Jonsuntitledpod Podcast. And if you are part of the closed Facebook group, the Wilson's House of Fuckery, and you are listening to this, thank you. Thank you guys for all the support and the questions that you have sent me to ask Chad and all the boys. And maybe there will be a meeting of the House of Fuckery, and we can all just lose our minds.
Bum, bum, bum.
And on that note, this is Fuck Up My High, and we will talk to you next time.